Imagine waking up one morning and feeling different. Not sick, not sad, just heavier. Like your soul had gained weight overnight. There's no obvious reason. The sun is still rising over the same skyline. Your coffee still steams just right. Your emails aren't even that bad. And yet, something in you drags. You feel drained before the day has even begun. Liam didn't notice it at first either. Living in a cozy apartment in Seattle, working as a freelance designer, life looked fine on paper. But that quiet heaviness had crept in slowly, silently, like fog rolling off Puget Sound. It wasn't burnout from work or a creative block. The weight was invisible until he saw where it came from. Jake. Jake was Liam's college roommate, a guy who once lit up parties with jokes and stories. But over the past year, Jake had transformed into something else entirely, a vortex of negativity. Every conversation was a rainstorm. His job was a joke. People were fake. The government was corrupt. The coffee shop was overpriced. The neighbors were too loud. It was a symphony of complaints, performed daily. Liam had brushed it off at first. He's just venting, he told himself. Everyone has bad days, but the bad days never stopped. And what shocked Liam the most wasn't Jake's words, it was how deeply they had infected his own mind. He found himself echoing Jake's complaints in casual conversation. He noticed his optimism thinning, his patience shortening, his spark dimming. That was the moment he realized, chronic complaining is contagious. You don't have to agree with a complainer to be changed by them. You just have to listen long enough. You absorb their worldview without realizing it. Like breathing secondhand smoke, their words settle into your lungs, your bloodstream, your soul, and eventually, you start coughing up the same discontent. Stoicism warns us not just against external chaos, but against internal erosion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But what if those thoughts aren't yours? What if they belong to someone who has made misery their language? This isn't about judging Jake. He wasn't evil, but he was dangerous to Liam's peace, and that's enough. So Liam made a choice. He didn't cut Jake off, but he stopped offering his ears like a donation box. He began setting invisible boundaries. He created mental distance even when they shared the same couch. He started journaling each night, not about what went wrong, but about what went right. Small joys, quiet wins. He tuned his inner voice back to gratitude. When Jake launched into another complaint about the weather, Liam nodded and said, "You might be right." Then he changed the subject. When the conversation got stuck in the mud of negativity, Liam chose to steer the wheel elsewhere. It wasn't passive. It was radical self-protection, and something magical happened. The heaviness lifted. Liam's creativity returned. His mornings felt lighter. The fog rolled back. You see, not all storms are loud. Some are whispered, drip by drip, through the words of people who mean no harm, but leave damage anyway. If you've been feeling off, drained, or disconnected from yourself, maybe it's not you. Maybe you've let someone else's storm take root in your calm. Maybe your peace has been slowly poisoned by someone who speaks in shadows. And if that's true, you're not powerless. You're just one choice away from getting it back. If this story resonates with you, or if you want to protect your own peace more fiercely, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep creating videos like this, and more importantly, it builds a community of people who are committed to living with intention, clarity, and strength. Now here's a question for you. Be honest, which situation feels more dangerous to your mental health? A. Being around someone who constantly complains, but never changes. B. Being completely isolated from others. Even if you're peaceful, drop your answer in the comments. A or B. I'm curious to see what you think, and we'll be featuring some of the best answers in our next video. Sophia had always been the calm one, the steady hand, the voice of reason. In the swirling chaos of family gatherings or startup deadlines in Austin, Texas, she was the anchor. But no one, not even the strongest among us, is immune to the slow pull of emotional whirlpools. And for Sophia, that whirlpool had a name. Maya, her cousin, arrived unexpectedly one summer, suitcase in hand and chaos in her wake. At first, it was supposed to be a short visit, a reunion, a chance to reconnect. But within days, it was clear that Mia didn't just carry luggage. She carried conflict, stories laced with betrayals, injustice, and emotional firestorms that always cast her as the burning center. There was no neutral space when Mia was around. A picnic at Zilker Park turned into a shouting match over who forgot the napkins. A walk along Lady Bird Lake spiraled into accusations about who supported whom less over the years. Every moment, no matter how serene, eventually bent toward tension. Sophia found herself bracing for impact before every interaction. It wasn't that Mia was cruel, it was that she was addicted to intensity. Her nervous system didn't know how to function without friction. Peace, to Mia, felt like abandonment. Drama, even if painful, confirmed that she was alive and that someone was paying attention. Sophia tried everything at first, comforting her, reasoning with her, even defending her when family members pushed back. But something inside her began to wear thin. The emotional labor became heavier than any professional project. It wasn't just Mia's stories, it was the way they wrapped themselves around Sophia's own sense of self. You see, drama doesn't just disturb the air, it your responses. It puts you in a constant state of alert, waiting for the next rupture. You stop focusing on your dreams and start anticipating the next explosion. And that's when Sophia remembered something she had once read from Epictetus. You may fetter my leg, but my will, not even Zeus himself can overpower. She realized she couldn't control Mia's chaos, but she could control how close she stood to the fire. So she tried a new tactic, one that didn't come naturally. Detachment, not the cold, uncaring kind, but the conscious kind. Sophia began practicing reflective listening. When Mia ranted about being mistreated by a friend, Sophia didn't dive into analysis or comfort. She simply mirrored back. It sounds like that made you feel really betrayed. No advice, no entanglement. Mia was disarmed by it. The conversation moved more quickly, and Sophia walked away without feeling drained. She also took Sundays for herself and started a practice she called the drama audit. 1 hour each weekend to reflect. Where did my energy go this week? Who disrupted my focus? What interactions left me feeling resentful instead of replenished? The answers were always illuminating. They pointed her back to one truth. Peace is a choice, and sometimes that choice looks like limited availability. Sophia didn't cut Mia out of her life, but she became selectively present. She stopped answering every late-night call. She created silent mornings, no phone, no interruptions, just her journal and a cup of coffee. And in those quiet hours, she found herself again. People who thrive on drama don't always realize the damage they do. They see their storms as signals for love. But love that comes at the cost of your well-being is not love, it's dependency. Stoicism doesn't tell us to abandon people. It tells us to build fortresses around our inner world. Strong walls, open gates, careful screening. Sophia still loved Mia, but now, she loved her with boundaries, with perspective, and with the courage to say, "This is my peace, you're welcome to join it, but you can't destroy it." If you've ever had a Mia in your life, someone who turns every calm into a crisis, know this: you don't owe them your stillness. You are not the fixer, the hero, or the emotional sponge. You are the architect of your mental landscape. Guard it like a sacred place. Because when you start choosing peace over participation in chaos, the drama stops seeing you as fuel and begins to fade. And that's when your real life begins. The first time Noah shared his startup idea with Alex, they were sitting under string lights on a Chicago rooftop, the skyline flickering like a promise. The moment felt sacred until it wasn't single quotes. Alex laughed. Not cruelly, just the way someone laughs when they're trying to be realistic. You know most startups fail, right? Like, over 90%. Are you sure this is the right time to take that kind of risk? The words didn't feel sharp at first. They landed soft, like snow. But snow piles up, and over the next few days, those words didn't leave Noah's mind. They echoed when he sat at his desk, when he scrolled through design mock-ups, when he tried to sleep. That rooftop spark dimmed into a flicker. He found himself doubting not just his idea, but his ability to make any idea real at all. Doubt doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from people who love you, who think they're protecting you. Alex wasn't trying to sabotage Noah. He was trying to keep him safe from risk, from disappointment, from failure. But in doing so, he handed Noah something far more dangerous, a mirror that reflected only fear. People like Alex are what Stoicism might call doubt dealers. They don't sell you cruelty, they sell you caution dressed as logic. And if you're not vigilant, you start to buy it. You start trading your boldness for certainty, your vision for statistics. You start playing small because someone else can't. Imagine you playing big dot. Noah realized this one morning when he opened his journal and stared at a page. He'd labeled launch plan. It was blank. Not because he didn't know what to do, but because he was waiting for someone else to believe in it first. That's when it hit him. Why was he giving someone else the pen to write his future? Epictetus once said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Noah underlined that quote 3 times. That afternoon, he wrote himself a letter, not to who he was now, but to the person he wanted to become in 3 years. It was a letter of victory, of pride, of clarity. He called it his vision anchor. Every time Alex or anyone cast shadows of doubt, Noah would read that letter, and the fire returned. But it wasn't just about internal resilience. Noah wanted to shift the dynamic with Alex too. So the next time they talked, Noah tried something new. He didn't defend his idea. He didn't explain. He asked, what advice would you give someone trying to launch a company like this? The question disarmed Alex. He moved from skeptic to strategist. He offered insights, not criticisms. The tone changed because Noah had changed the script. Stoicism teaches us that our perception, not events, shapes our reality. We can't control every voice we hear, but we can control which ones we believe. And even more importantly, we can control which ones we invite into our most sacred places, our dreams, our decisions, our self-worth. Noah still talks to Alex, but he no longer waits for his approval. He no longer gives fear the front seat. Because here's the truth. If you let someone else's limits define your path, you'll always be driving in circles. Real growth demands discomfort. It demands being misunderstood, doubted, even dismissed. But it also demands courage, the kind that comes not from others clapping for you, but from you clapping for yourself when no one else will. So if you've been sitting on a dream, waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to start, this is your sign. You don't need permission. You need conviction. Because your fire once lit isn't meant to be debated. It's meant to burn. Ava had walked this path through Central Park 100 times before. It was her reset route, a quiet loop where she could breathe, reflect, and catch the rhythm of her own thoughts again. But today, she wasn't alone. Erin walked beside her, pacing not with the rhythm of the city, but with the weight of her own sorrow. It's always the same, Erin said. Every time I start trusting someone, they leave. Maybe I'm just not meant to be happy. Ava had heard this line or versions of it for years. Every broken relationship, every job rejection, every health scare became another thread in Erin's tapestry of helplessness. She wasn't sharing a story. She was reinforcing an identity. Victimhood had become her comfort zone. And for Ava, that realization came with its own quiet ache, because there's something soul-wearing about loving someone who refuses to see their own strength. You try to uplift them, to offer perspective, to remind them of their wins, but the story they keep telling themselves is louder. And over time, that story begins to drag on you, too. Stoicism warns us of this weight. It's not just about protecting ourselves from external noise, but from internal narratives that rob us of agency. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." But for Aaron, every obstacle became a reason to retreat. Twofold. To surrender. Ava used to jump in with solutions. She'd spend hours brainstorming ways Aaron could reframe her mindset, approach her dating life differently, advocate for herself at work. But nothing ever stuck. Aaron didn't want change, she wanted validation. She wanted someone to agree that the world was unfair and she was its target. So this time, Ava didn't offer advice. She asked a question. What if this isn't about what others are doing to you but what you're doing to yourself? Aaron stopped walking. What's that supposed to mean? It means, what if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the story you keep choosing to believe about yourself? The air between them thickened. For a second, Ava thought she'd gone too far, but something flickered in Aaron's eyes, not anger, but recognition, like a door cracking open for the first time in years. Victim mentality is seductive. It offers a strange kind of certainty. If nothing is your fault, then nothing is your responsibility. But it also means nothing is within your power to change, and that is a deeply disempowering place to live. Ava knew this because she had lived there once, too, years ago, when her own career had stalled and her self-worth had crumbled. She had blamed everything: her boss, her upbringing, the market. But nothing shifted until she looked in the mirror and whispered the words that changed her life. Maybe I'm the one who needs to move. She didn't share that story with Aaron, not yet. It wasn't the time. But she hoped, deeply, that her friend would one day find that mirror for herself. In the days that followed, Ava created new boundaries. She was still there for Aaron, but not as a crutch. She limited conversations that circled the same drain. She offered presence, not solutions. And when she walked the park alone again, she did so without guilt. There's a quiet kind of love in stepping back, in letting someone wrestle with their own story instead of writing it for them. It's not abandonment, it's respect for their growth, for their timing, for your own peace. Stoicism doesn't demand coldness, it demands clarity. It calls us to see people not as projects to be fixed, but as souls on their own path. And it calls us to see ourselves the same way. Ava never stopped hoping for Aaron's awakening, but she stopped sacrificing her own to wait for it. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say to someone is, "I believe in your ability to rise, but I won't keep kneeling in the dirt beside you while you refuse to stand." And in that space of hard truth, something extraordinary happens. You begin to rise too. Dylan hadn't expected the end to feel so silent. No slammed doors, no dramatic fights, just a text message and a hollow stretch of hours that followed. He walked along Venice Beach that evening, not to feel better, but simply to feel something. The waves crashed, people laughed in the distance, but inside, he was unraveling. And then came the messages. "You'll find someone even better. Just stay positive, bro. Everything happens for a reason." They poured in like rain on a roof that couldn't leak, but inside, he was drowning. Everyone meant well. He knew that. But each shiny phrase landed like a slap across grief's face. There was no space for sadness, no permission to be raw, just a demand to smile and move on. Toxic positivity is a strange thing. It looks like love, it sounds like encouragement, but it can suffocate. Because when you're in pain, and someone tells you to just look on the bright side, what you hear isn't comfort. What you hear is, your sadness is inconvenient. Your struggle makes us uncomfortable. Please wear a mask of joy, so so we don't have to sit in the discomfort with you. Dylan wasn't asking for solutions. He wasn't looking for someone to fix the hole in his chest. He was just hoping someone would see it and sit beside him anyway. Seneca once wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." But he never said happiness meant denying the present moment's complexity. Stoicism doesn't flinch in the face of pain. It meets it with stillness, with acceptance, with presence. In the days after the breakup, Dylan started a new practice he called emotional honesty hours. 1 hour each evening, where he let himself feel everything without judgment. He didn't write affirmations. He didn't force gratitude. He just named what was real: heartbreak, disappointment, hope, confusion, anger, love. This practice became a sacred ritual, and eventually, he invited someone into it. Natalie, an old friend, didn't flinch when he cried. She didn't rush to change the subject or offer silver linings. She listened. When he spoke of missing his ex, she said, "I miss her too. You two were really good together." And in that moment, Dylan felt the rarest kind of peace, the kind that doesn't come from being cheered up, but from being seen. That's when he understood the real danger of toxic positivity. It isolates. It tells us to perform happiness instead of experiencing life in its wholeness. And in doing so, it robs us of the very thing that helps us heal: connection. We don't grow through suppression. We grow through integration. Stoicism calls us to see life as it is, not as we wish it to be. To look suffering in the eye and say, "You may visit, but you will not own me." Dylan didn't reject positivity altogether. He just redefined it. To him now, positivity wasn't a denial of the dark. It was a quiet light that burned even when the room was still full of shadows. It was a walk on the beach where he cried and smiled in the same breath. It was a conversation where no one tried to fix him. It was a journal entry that ended with, "I'm not okay yet, and that's okay." In a world that pressures us to move on, to be fine, to get over it, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stand still and feel, to let sorrow shape us, not shatter us. If you've ever been told to just cheer up when your heart was breaking, know this: your pain is not a problem, it's a process. And the people who can sit with you in that process without demanding you become someone you're not are the ones worth holding on to. Healing doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like presence, like pausing, like honoring what was lost before reaching for what might come next. Dylan kept walking that beach every evening for a while, not to escape the silence, but to let it speak. And in that space, without being rushed, joy returned. Quietly, honestly, on its own terms. Caleb stood backstage under the soft blue lights, his guitar in hand, heart pounding in rhythm with the crowd murmuring beyond the curtain. It should have been a moment of pride, a sold-out local show in Nashville, the result of months of rehearsal, late nights, and empty pocket gigs. But all he could think about was Russ. Russ had been there since the beginning, a mentor, a guide, the guy who knew people. He helped Caleb book gigs, introduced him to producers, always with that warm, encouraging voice that said, "You're going to make it. Just trust me." But over time, that voice changed. It became sharper, hungrier. "You owe me. Remember that. Just one more free set. Think of the exposure. You'd be nothing without my help." At first, Caleb didn't resist. Gratitude can blur boundaries, but eventually, his bank account couldn't lie. Neither could his exhaustion. He realized he wasn't being mentored anymore. He was being used. Manipulators don't always look like villains. Sometimes they look like friends. They wear charm like a mask and twist your kindness into currency. And by the time you notice, the script has changed. They're already writing your next scene for their own benefit. One night, Caleb sat down and did something he'd never done before. He made a list of everything Russ had helped him with, and everything Russ had taken. Money, time, energy, control. The imbalance was blinding. It was the first time Caleb saw it not as a partnership, but a performance he'd been cast in without consent. Stoicism teaches us that we may not control the people who enter our lives, but we do control how we respond. Epictetus reminds us, we are disturbed not by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens. And Caleb's thoughts had shifted. He stopped seeing himself as a grateful rookie. He started seeing himself as a man with choices, so he made one the next. Time, Russ called in a favor. Caleb replied with steady resolve. I appreciate everything you've done, but I don't play for free anymore. The silence on the other end was long, then cold. Caleb knew the cost, but he also knew the freedom. Meanwhile, in another city, Rachel sat at her kitchen table in Denver, laptop open, to-do list untouched. She'd planned to write, to catch up on work, to finally get ahead. Instead, her phone buzzed. A friend needing a ride, another inviting her to lunch, a neighbor asking for help with their resume. Rachel said yes to all of it. She always did. People liked her, respected her. She was dependable, kind, available. But lately, that availability had become her prison. Time vampires don't bite. They ask sweetly. They flatter you into giving hours away, but what they take is irreversible. And Rachel had started to feel it. The ache of missed goals, the quiet resentment that crept in every time she said yes to something that wasn't hers to carry. One evening, she opened a journal and wrote, "Where did my time go this week?" The answer was sobering. Of the 40 hours she planned for personal growth, only 12 remained. The rest had been consumed by others' fires. That's when she drew a line. Not out of anger, but clarity. Rachel started using boundary scripts, short, honest sentences that protected her energy. I'm not available today, but I hope it goes well. Thanks for thinking of me, but I need this time for myself. Simple, firm, respectful. Some friends adjusted, others pushed back, but Rachel stayed the course. And slowly, her days began to open again. Mornings of focus, afternoons of flow, evenings of peace. The world will always ask for more of you. Manipulators will test your loyalty. Time vampires will appeal to your generosity. But the only person who can guard your life's rhythm is you. Stoicism is not about becoming hard or closed off. It's about discernment. It's about recognizing the hidden cost of constant yeses and the quiet power of a well-timed no. Caleb played that show that night, and he played it for himself. Rachel wrote 3 chapters the following week, and every word felt like a reclamation, because when you stop letting others write your schedule or your story, you finally hear the music of your own life, and it's worth listening to. By the end of this journey, one thing becomes clear. These weren't just 7 types of people. They were 7 mirrors, and each one reflected a piece of life's complexity that we often try to ignore. Liam, the designer from Seattle, didn't just learn to avoid chronic complaining. He learned the importance of emotional hygiene. He discovered that peace isn't something you stumble into, it's something you defend, day by day, conversation by conversation. His story reminds us that proximity to negativity doesn't have to mean participation. Sometimes, the most powerful response is silence, space, and a firm internal boundary. Sophia, juggling her startup and family ties in Austin, faced the whirlwinds of constant drama, but instead of getting swept up in them, she chose stillness. Not the passive kind, but the practiced, intentional calm that Stoicism teaches. Her strength wasn't in suppressing emotion, it was in refusing to be baited by chaos. In her decision to step back without stepping away, she showed us how love and boundaries can coexist. Noah, the rooftop dreamer in Chicago, encountered the quiet erosion of ambition through well-meaning doubt. The difference between advice and fear is subtle, but vital. And by anchoring himself to his vision, not someone else's comfort, Noah reclaimed his power. His choice wasn't just about launching a startup. It was about trusting himself again, even in the face of skepticism. Ava, walking the familiar path through Central Park, had perhaps the hardest battle of all, watching someone she loved choose helplessness over hope. Aaron's victim mentality could have swallowed Ava's spirit too, but Ava chose compassionate detachment. Her story reveals the quiet courage in saying, "I won't write your story for you, but I'll be here when you decide to pick up the pen." Dylan's heartbreak on the shores of Venice Beach uncovered the dark side of relentless optimism. In his world, toxic positivity didn't heal, it silenced. But when he stopped trying to fix his emotions and instead made space to feel them, he found clarity. Dylan teaches us that healing is never linear, and real support doesn't mean bypassing pain, it means walking through it, hand in hand with truth. Caleb, in the underbelly of Nashville's music scene, exposed the cunning nature of manipulation, how mentorship can slowly become control. But in reclaiming his time, his talent, and his terms, he sent a message louder than any song. Your gifts are sacred, and no one should profit from your silence. Rachel, overwhelmed in Denver, didn't need to be rescued. She just needed to remember that her time was hers to own. And once she did, she began composing her life with intention instead of obligation. Together, these stories don't just warn us about others, they ask us to reflect on ourselves. Have you ever complained so much that you darkened someone else's day? Created chaos because it was more familiar than calm? Undermined a friend's dream out of your own fear? Played the victim? Masked your pain with smiles? Taken more than your share of someone's time? We all have. And that's the beauty of these lessons. They're not indictments, they're invitations to grow, to change, to become the kind of person we'd want in our own lives. Stoicism isn't about judgment, it's about clarity. It teaches us that we are not victims of people, of moods, of circumstances. We are sculptors of our character, and every interaction is a chisel. So how do we apply this in our lives? Start by doing a relationship inventory. Who lifts you up, and who leaves you feeling drained? Who challenges you with love, and who manipulates with guilt? Who respects your boundaries, and who treats your time like it's theirs to spend? Then, more importantly, who are you to them? Begin setting limits not just with people, but with patterns. Decline the invitation to every argument. Don't buy into every crisis. Let people feel their discomfort without making it your responsibility to fix it. And don't wait for permission to protect your peace. True Stoic strength isn't just resilience, it's refinement. It's becoming deliberate with your energy, your attention, your presence. It's learning to walk away from noise, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your own clarity to stay stuck in someone else's storm. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these 7 characters did you relate to the most? Was there a moment that felt like your life? Maybe it was Liam's quiet burnout, Ava's emotional exhaustion, or Dylan's need to finally be seen without a smile. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your perspective. You never know who might read your words and feel understood for the first time. And if you found meaning in this story, if it helped you reflect, grow, or breathe a little deeper, consider subscribing to the channel. It's not just about support, it's about building a space where we can keep asking hard questions, keep exploring.